Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. We had a meeting at 10 o'clock. Glad to see some faces showing up here. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Dave, Marty, Cassidy, and of course, our guest lecturer today, Melinda. Glad to see people making their way in. You're all getting back into the classroom right at the nick of time. Welcome, Carlos. So we have a great day lined up for you guys. You know what I was thinking of today is you guys are going to really miss DJ Broker Bob and spinning tunes every day and seeing what he has in his iTunes. So you'll have to come see me perform one of these days at the rave. Anyway, welcome aboard, everybody. We are nearing the end. We're the second next day. Tomorrow is our last day, and we have a great lineup today. We're going to talk about once you get into a transaction, negotiating. You still are negotiating. You're pretty much negotiating all the way through close of escrow until you get that check in the bank. And we're going to talk about what happens when you get that escrow open and what are your responsibilities, but more about how do you guide client through escrow, because I was always taught that when escrow starts, the real work begins. That's like getting to the finish line. So we have a great lineup today, a great instructor that's going to tell you what she does to do that. But before we get into that, we're going to do a quick recap of yesterday with Coach Corey. He talked about negotiating the deal and going out and getting properties into escrow. What were some of the things that after you've marinated for 24 hours that stood out to you that you're remembering? And you're going to implement into your business or take note of that when you do start getting into transactions. And he also talked about the smart plans and how building your database, doing your daily 10-4 and adding people into your database is going to help you. And that's the systematization of your business that's going to bring future business down the road. So I pretty much said everything, but what did you guys think?
I would say that part just specifically connected with me, like the smart plans, because it's so user friendly to just be able to keep in contact with those people, and you're not forgetting, you're not constantly having too much on your mind. So I really liked that part.
Thanks, Hope. Do you remember at the very early on when I first started, top agents would always, if they're asked one question, what's the one question that they wish they would have done better early on?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. It was always, they wish they would have kept their database a little bit more organized. And every top agent will say that. They wish they would have kept their database more organized because they realize the power of the database. And the database is really important for you guys to get this as a lesson through Ignite. Please heed this warning. Think of it as a, you all go to the doctor or dentist, correct? And when the doctor or dentist wants to retire, and which they do, they go sell their business. And there are real estate agents or their business brokers that actually specialize in selling medical practices. And what that doctor is really selling, they're selling the clients that the doctor has, because that's the value of what the doctor has, the clients that are there walking in the door week after week after week. So if you're thinking long-term, and I hope you guys always look long-term, what does this mean to me? Long-term is eventually, unless you're going to be showing homes till your last day, you're going to eventually want to retire, which means you're going to want to sell that database to somebody else. And I've seen agents that have either sold it outright, they just did a cash buyout, or they did what was called a referral buyout over a period of time. And any business that came in, they just sat back and got the referral fee and let that agent that bought it do all the work. So think about that. All right, Marty, what did you come up with?
Sorry about that. Just the book recommendations that he had yesterday were great as well. Sorry, say the question one more time.
Well, what stood out to you yesterday, or what's marinated in the last 24 hours that you?
Definitely the smart plans portion and just utilizing that feature within KW Command, and then how he was saying 30 contacts a day for 90 days, and how he went even above and beyond that in getting a listing agreement in the first week of him, on his 72nd call. It was tiresome and grueling, but it paid off just with the persistence and going out and getting after it. So that stuck out to me that, yeah, there might be a certain number you want to reach, but if you keep pushing beyond that, you'll be pleasantly surprised with the results.
Yeah.
Marty, if I can jump in for a second, Robert. Marty, Corey and I used to work together in a different office, and he and I started at the office about the same time, and we get to know each other in what we call the bullpen, which is where we did our calls. And Corey was a beast.
Yeah.
And he's built his business on that. He's so strong on that. That's not my strength. I learned so much from being in that room with him. So when we can even get back into the office, there's some, and even we can do it virtually, some of the calling things that support that energy. It was amazing because when I wanted to quit, Corey was scripting through somebody. I learned so much from him and another guy who's in commercial now named Abe. So you're spot on that. There's a lot to be said for just beasting through it.
Yeah, just his competitive nature, kind of growing up, it kind of relayed well for his, talent in the real estate world. So that kind of stuck out to me as well.
Well, thanks for sharing. So I hope the rest of you people will turn on your videos, because I want to ask this question and I really need to see your faces. You remember that we have the daily 10-4, right? And that's, add 10 people to your database, reach out to 10 people as part of it. How many of you are consistently contacting and talking with 10 people a day? And be honest. If you aren't, great. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Even if you're not showing your face, you can raise your hand too. Carlos is going maybe. All right, I get it. We don't like it. It's not the fun part. So Melinda, our instructor today, we met in what we call the BOLD class. We took BOLD several times together. And in that class, it's a 7-week class. It might be pared down now, but it's different. It's online now, but we did the physical one. 7-week class, 20 contacts a day for those 7 weeks. And you report your numbers every day. And of course, that's a challenge. And Corey said he did what, 50? Here's an interesting thing that happened to me today at my gym. You all know I go to F45, and they've done an 8-week challenge. And in the past, my coach says, at the middle of the 8 weeks, people petered out. And so they're doing a 21-day shred is what they're doing, because they're looking, why don't we do high impact, high intensity for 21 days and see what happens? So I want to challenge all of you to do a 21-day, at least 20 contacts a day, and see how that can transform your business. Just do it 5 days a week, 21 days, 5 days a week, do 20 contacts a day. I bet you at the end of 21 days, you will probably have more business than you know what to do with. But it's going to take some commitment. So speak with your coach and talk about that, because not only are you going to need to do it, you're going to need the accountability. Because every time that I've seen even top agents do a challenge for themselves, about midway through the challenge, they get tired, they get exhausted. They got, can I continue doing this? It's survival of the fittest. And this now more than ever is going to require really stepping up our game because of where we are. And you got nothing but time on your hands right now as a brand new agent. If you're not doing a lot of deals, you got lots of time on your hand. So with that said, we're going to get into today's class. We have a great class today. Our instructor is Melinda Cruz DePerna. As I said, I met her at BOLD. She's one of our top agents in our office. A wealth of knowledge. She comes from a real estate type background, and I'll let her share that, give herself a little bio. But she actually has a really great servant's heart. She always wants to give back and always wants to help people. and always wants to see the better for our office. And she started at another market center within Keller Williams, and she really liked what we had here, and she transferred over here, and we're blessed to have her. And today she's going to talk about once you get into a transaction, and then talk about how she's operating her business today. So, and then we'll take our break at about 11, and then we'll finish up at noon, hopefully today. Without further ado, Melinda, the floor is all yours. And by the way, everybody, I will drop the right PDF into the chat bar today so you can have the materials. So take it away, Melinda.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So I guess this is my first negotiation of the morning. I need to see your faces. Unless you don't have a shirt on, and if I guess it's our office culture. If you're a guy, if you don't have your shirt on, I don't care. But I'd like you to turn on your video. It's really important to me because I can't be there live, and the interaction's important. I can't judge your question. You know, I can't judge where we're at. So I'm going to ask, I've got mine on, and I'm going to let you know it's work at home for everybody. So if you got kids, you got animals, whatever, it is what it is. I've got a bird over this shoulder. I have a dog right here, and they're locked in here in the office because I'm trying to keep them quiet and keep the cat from eating the bird. So I can't promise that. The background. I don't even know if Robert really knows my real background because I came in probably 6 years into this business over to this office. I was a chemist. And for those of you, and I'm going to talk about DISC a little bit, who know the DISC profile, that's usually a really high C person. I have very little C. And in this segment, that comes in, you're going to see that. I'm actually really, really uber high D, if you know anything about the DISC. That's the driver personality with some I thrown in there. Everybody thinks I'm an extrovert. I'm not, but that's okay. I started as a chemist in a laboratory on a bench, and it was eating my soul. And despite it being one of the most difficult professions, it paid horribly. So I started my MBA right away out of college, got my master's in that, and I went into the marketing and tech support side of chemistry, the technical background. So I actually come from a Fortune 100 background in marketing. Then I decided to have this brilliant thing 27 years ago and have a baby. I was married. I had babies. I was moving around the country. I'd been transferred around. I had this awesome career of the 80s, you know, the yuppie thing, and decided this wasn't working. I traveled 70% of the time. So I stepped off the corporate ladder and became, believe it or not, I did some consulting, but I became a stay-at-home mom. And that was my primary job for almost 20 years. And in that job, I helped a husband start other companies. We were both technical people. And I started a vacation rental business. So we invested in property. I had property on the East Coast and then bought property here on the West Coast. And I was doing such a great job at managing my own vacation rentals. People started asking me to manage theirs. So I said yes. And I needed to get a real estate broker's license in order to manage anything that went over 30 days. So in the wintertime, we get the snowbirds, birds. I wanted to do it legally. So I did that for 5 to 7 years through the recession. And everybody was making money except me in the recession. None of my clients lost their homes. It was pretty amazing. And my own personal life required me to get out of that business. I wasn't with KW at the time. Had I been with KW at the time, I would have known how to leverage, and I probably would have either leveraged or sold that business at a profit. Instead, I just got out. So I wake up in 2013, I think. Yeah, 2013. And basically need to get to work, and I need to make 6 figures. And so I've got this real estate broker's license. So that's how I got in the business. And I said, when I was a property manager, I said, I would never, ever sell, because my sales job in the 80s selling chemicals was a disaster. I hated it. I did well, but I hated it. So here I am, I'm at KW, and it changed my life. My first class is Ignite. And, you know, I'll tell all of you guys, if you do what Broker Bob asks you to do in Ignite, and your coaches ask you to do, you'll have $1 million business. I mean, $1 million GCI. If I just did the daily 10-4, 5 days a week, I'd do that. I don't even need to do the 20 a day because I've gotten good enough at conversion and negotiation. So anyway, What I want to give you today is some of the skill and practical knowledge to convert at a high level or to keep your deals at a high level. Does that make sense? Okay. And my request from you guys is that you participate. That's all I need. I'll feed right off of you. I'll take questions as they come. I'm interactive. I'll talk too much if you don't interrupt me. And I need that. So a few of you have been in my classes before. I know Dave has, I think maybe even Michael has, maybe Junior. So I'd love to interact. I do want to know who's in the room. So by either a show of hands using that cool thing or chat, I want to know who's closed transactions already. 1. Okay, so 2, 3. We got a few that have closed transactions. So this is going to be a little easier for you. For those of you that haven't, are you in the coaching program? You've got to be anyway. So you've got a good coach. So that's really, really, really critical. All right. I want to know also, Robert, I don't know how we start out our agents. Have most of you had your DISC profile done? No. Okay. Those of you who have, feel free to jump in. I mentioned I'm a high D. That's the driver personality. That's this person from Boston who talks fast, okay? Who's like, let's get it done. Let's go. It's the bull in the china shop person, okay? It's great for old school negotiations when you're sitting in a high position of power. Not necessarily great for building consensus. Great for leading, but how do you make everybody feel good and not run them over? I also have I over the line, and that's the influencer, and that's a gift because it allows me to build rapport with people. I have very little S. S is the part that likes stability, and S is the part that is really good at loving on people. So when we get to the part about client relationships, I may love my people. I'm not great at showing it, okay? And then C. C is important in this part. This is where you have to know, and the reason I'm going on the DISC is you need to know where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. My weakness is in C. Even though I was a chemist, my weakness is in C. I am not a detail-oriented person. So I have to bring somebody on my team, a transaction coordinator, that makes sure I stay on task and get it right. And a great broker. I'm a broker. I could do this myself. I rely, Robert, shake your head. Do I rely on my broker and on Mark Miller for questions to make sure I've got it right? Absolutely. Okay. All right. So I love having that backup. All right. So in this class, we have 3 goals today. Or 4, it says. Know the basic steps for contract to close process. And I'm really going to push you to your coaches for those details on that stuff. That's too boring to sit here on a Zoom call. Identify your responsibilities to the representing buyers and sellers. I'm going to focus a lot on this. Explore common issues that can occur in the contract to close process and workable solutions, and generate new business from each transaction via repeat and referral clients. And I should disclose, I kind of mentioned this when I mentioned Corey, I'm not a huge prospector. I'll do it to survive. Last year, all of my business was referral. Okay, either agent to agent, past client, sphere of influence, or vendors. This year, all of my business is referral, okay? Make sense? Okay, anybody have, and this is the first time I've taught this segment, so I've got to refer to my notes a little bit more. In a successful, so we're in the, do you guys all have materials? Or are you just following with me? Feel free to unmute. You all have materials, yes?
It's been dropped in their chat bar.
Okay. So the successful contract to close, your transactions close on time as expected. The process is smooth and painless for everyone involved. That includes the other agent, by the way. And you win future business due to your 10 plus customer experience. How would that be for you guys if it all went smoothly? Pretty good, right? Okay. So let me ask you guys, so unmute yourselves. How are we going to ensure these 3 outcomes? How are we going to ensure that it closes on time as expected? How are we going to make it smooth and painless? And how are we going to get referrals and glowing reviews from those clients? Go ahead and unmute yourselves and hop in here.
a more broad answer is provide like excellent service, and meaning putting them that we're working with our client to make sure that they get what they need,
Mhm.
and being straight with them, communicating with them on a regular basis, so they're not like wondering, is he even doing anything? You know, communicating with them, so if their expectations are like really far out there, that bring them back down to earth. And then also negotiate for them. If we're in escrow and they need this or this, and depending on what the market is, if you're a seller, you got a lot more options right now, and negotiating and getting their terms and finding good ways to negotiate that actually work.
Mhm. Junior and Marty, you're unmuted. You have some things to add?
Dave kind of touched on it, just effective communication, almost to the point of over communicating, just to make sure that there's nothing left unsaid.
Mhm.
And your referrals will build, just giving great service. That'll kind of all work itself out more or less. It's more about just giving the best service as possible to the person at hand, and it'll have a trickle effect of positive, down the road.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would add to that effective management and organizing and communication.
All right, I keep hearing the same thing, communication. Sarah, you're unmuted too. Anything?
Well, as part of the communication that you're giving, so what we've talked about in previous classes is just managing expectations, and so that they understand, okay, this is where we are, this is the next steps, this is what I need you to do by this time, this is what we're expecting the buyers to do by a certain time. And then I think following through and being like, okay, well, the buyers were supposed to submit by today, but they haven't, so I'm going to make this phone call, and just making sure that they understand the steps that you're taking and the steps that need to be taken for all of those things to come together successfully.
Well, Sarah, you were my segue plant then, because I have written here, I have 4 things written on this page: phone, text, email, phone. Again, you're going to see a theme. and what's next? Okay. So this is the perfect segment for me. And Robert knows that I kind of balked at teaching this. I wanted to teach a different segment. And yesterday I was like, wait, I'm teaching that? That's the boring part. And he's like, no, it's not. It's negotiation. I love negotiation. Okay. I'm a certified negotiation expert. I told you I came from Fortune 100. I used to negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts. I love this part because it's where I get my adrenaline. It's my juice. So it's the what's next though. So I have two that I just put into escrow in the last 48 hours. So I have a lot of these conversations, and I called at 7:15 this morning to tell the gal she got her offer accepted out of 14. And in this market, we're so focused on that right now. If you're representing buyers, we're so focused on getting the offer accepted. Well, guess what? You just got started. There's so much that can go wrong and so much that can go right. But what I told her this morning was, okay, every time we speak, if I don't say to you, this is what's next, I want you to ask me what's next, because people only retain about 10% of what we tell them. And so you're going to think, well, I told them how this process is going to work, and they're not going to remember it. And there's a lot of moving parts. So the what's next this morning, your offers accepted was, okay, you're going to start to get emails from my transaction coordinator, because I've realized that they start getting emails from my transaction coordinator like, who is this person? You're going to hear from an escrow officer, and that's the only person you're going to speak to about wiring money, and you're going to speak to them before you wire it. We're going to speak to your lender because you need to lock your rate, and you're going to have to wire money soon. Okay, so those are, and I'm going to schedule all the inspections for you because that's how I work. I first clear that that's okay with her, but I'm going to schedule all that stuff, and then we'll talk again later.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Melinda. So it's hard to remember things. I write everything down. If I get a great idea, I got these pads all over my place. What I do, I coach clients. And what I do is when I touch on something that I think is really important, I just tell them, okay, you need to write this down. I just tell them, write it down. And then I ask them, okay, so what did you write down? yeah, you caught it, good, okay, and they walk away with this list of things to do, and they actually know what to do, and then I pick up on that next time.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that, Dave, is knowing your client. Okay, so how they work. This one that I opened escrow with this morning is an electrical engineer. Guess what? I'm going to go back to DISC. She's extremely high C. Okay, I told you guys I don't have a lot of C, but guess what? I was married to a high C, like the highest they get, for 30 years or 25 years. I trained as a C profession, and I love working with scientists and engineers because I know how to help them speak their language. But at the same time, I can go out and have a coffee with the high I too and just chit chat and then get the business done. So you need to know how to mirror and match those DISC profiles, understand yourself, and understand those. And this is going to help you so much in negotiation because you need to learn how to move with your own strengths, but to their strengths. So she's going to need details, like you said, Dave, telling her to write it down. Or I see Eric says he texts them a list of what's next because they do forget, and it saves you phone calls and repeat questions. And that's if they're a texter. So already in my first interview with them as sellers or buyers, I ask them how they like to communicate best, and I tell them how I like to communicate best. Okay, I tell them, just like while I've been with you, I'm not going to answer my phone while I'm with you. However, I might check a text real quick to make sure it's not an emergency. So text me to tell me you need me, talk to me to talk about it, and then email it to confirm it. And you're going to hear that over and over from me. And I know Robert really likes that email part because it creates a record. That's my weakness, is that the emailing it, and I'm getting better at that. So being organized, I'm going to go through some of the things that they suggest here. Knowing the steps involved and potential pitfalls to avoid are important. Being organized. I cannot, Dave already knows this because he's been in one of my classes, setting expectations. So much of this is about setting expectations. Over communication, you can't communicate too much. Phone, text, email, phone, text, email. And I'm a huge texter, but one of the biggest gifts I've ever learned was from my coach at the other office, and that was pick up the damn phone. Okay, pick up the phone. I have a rule. I don't deliver good news or bad news by anything but phone. All right, you don't want to, when we talk about getting those referrals later on, I don't want to miss that opportunity to connect with you when you cry because you're so excited, I just got you this house. And I also don't want to miss that opportunity to pick you up off the ground when you're so disappointed because we found out that there's $54,000 of foundation repairs and you're going to have to walk away. I can't do that by text or email. I don't care how many emoticons I use. I can't do that. Okay. Okay, good. So make it happen. Know the process. All right, who's involved in the process? I want you to, you can put it up in chat. You can take yourself off mute. Who all is going to deal with this? We've opened escrow. Most of you as newer agents are going to represent more buyers from the start, though you may have some sellers. So I'm going to focus first on buyers. Who all's involved?
You have the buyer,
Yeah.
the agent, the escrow company,
Escrow,
and you have the lender,
lender,
and you have your coach,
your coach. Yep.
and title.
Yep.
There's more.
There's more.
Oh, TC.
PC. Who else is going to be involved in this transaction? This is actually somewhere that I really make a difference. And it came from my Fortune 100. Who else who's your first phone call after you open escrow?
Home inspector.
There, Eric, you got it, your home inspector. What happens when he says consult the electrician, the plumber, the roofer, the foundation person, the termite? Okay, we're now up to 13 involved. What about mommy and daddy who are giving gift money instead of a wedding during COVID?
The appraiser too.
The appraiser. Okay, we're up to 15. look at all those people you have to have relationships with and negotiations with them. I'm negotiating this morning to get an inspector out to my property really fast because I write a 10-day inspection clause. That's part of how we got one over 14 offers. Do you think that it's important I have a relationship with my inspectors, a textable relationship that direct to them that says, hey, buddy, I need your help. I need an inspection. I got a 7-day inspection. I have a 5-day inspection. Do you think that I need it's not a Rolodex, but do you think I need a bunch of painters and other contractors? I need somebody that will come out quick for a foundation inspection or roof inspection. What about when it's raining and I need the roof inspector or the AC in a heat wave? Okay, so those vendor relationships are important as well. Go ahead, Junior.
Why is it a negotiation tactic to lessen the time on those contingencies?
On getting contingencies? Well, think about it. Okay, when you open escrow, you basically, especially the way our MLS works, you're taking your house off the market. Okay, so the standard contract says 17 days, right? Is it 17, Robert, or 14?
7.
It's 17. Okay, so it's a 17 days. So you're basically taking your house off the market for 17 out of the 30 days that we close, and the buyer can walk away for any reason in those 17 days, any reason whatsoever. I've had a buyer say, I don't want to buy this house, there's gophers in the yard. I had one walk out on my own personal deal. I'm afraid a golf ball is going to hit the house. There's no dings in the house. It's on a golf course. No dings, never hit the house. But they walked, and they don't even have to tell you why they're walking away. They can walk away for any reason. So by shortening that contingency of the inspections, if I can meet the shortened contingency, that's where the relationships and the conversations come in, then the seller has their home off the market for less time. There's less risk for them. And especially if they're moving in an upleg, that allows them to get a contingent contract accepted. Because sometimes you're not just managing your transaction, you're managing the upleg, especially now with short inventory. You're going to have, the sellers are going to have the acceptance of your offer contingent upon them finding a replacement property. But they can't find a replacement property till they're in escrow. And one of the things you're going to ask as a good listing agent when you're accepting a contingent offer, have you released contingencies yet? How far along in escrow are you? If it's not an escrow, what's the house priced at? There's so many sides to manage. There's so many negotiations. So the more questions you know to ask, the better. But that's just one tool, Junior. And that's one of the big tools I use. And it's actually getting taken away from me right now because the vendors are so busy. My lenders, I usually write appraisals, even VA appraisals for 14 days and close in 21. They can't do that right now. So one of the things I'm going to tell you is setting that expectation, calling your people and finding out what can you do. Like that's critical because your word, once you enter into a contract, please don't be that person that just writes whatever you have to write to get it done. You overbid, you overpromise, you cut your contingencies, and then you don't need anything. That makes you a really crappy co-op agent. And that makes your deals blow up. So one of the things in my offer letters to sellers is my deals close. My clients understand that, and I'll have the conversation, I won't put it in writing. My clients understand that inspections are for safety, systems, structure, and surprises. Not to get new carpet that I already saw that was worn. Okay, so it's about, it's the conversations over and over and over again.
Thank you.
You tell I'm passionate. Okay, so you have all of these guys that you're working with and you're negotiating with all of them. Let me tell you, if you're rude to an inspector or disrespectful to them, or if they hear you tell your clients things that you shouldn't be telling them, they're not going to fit you in on their schedule. Okay, these guys don't fit me in on their schedule because I buy them coffee or we're friends. We become friends because they do well by my clients. Okay, those relationships matter. The other thing that I'll say, and I hope I'm not preaching, is I told you Corey and I worked together, okay, before. people in your office are watching. In that bullpen, I have obtained a lifelong client and his father, who he's a broker, but he got out of this business and manages property. I've sold and listed and bought for them 3 family properties. They know tons of agents. Okay, they're wealthy people. They're watching what you do. There's commercial agents in that office that have referred business to me. Everybody's watching what you do. There's agents that get out of this business or move away that refer business to me. How you treat everybody, these relationships, that win-win of our culture is essential to success in this part of the business. Rolling up your sleeves, building rapport, and figuring out how you make this go while representing your client as their fiduciary. And Robert and I spoke yesterday. Hang on, Dave. When we spoke yesterday, we talked about something, how it's important not to get commission breath in this part of the transaction, these 3 weeks. And it's important to be able to counsel your client if it doesn't make sense in the deal. It's always their decision, but you need to be willing to walk away from this if it doesn't make sense. Never get commission breath. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, first, all these, when you're people we need to keep on top of during a 3-week or 30-day, just sounds like really overwhelming, you know, because a lot of it's out of our control. They're either, you know, we have relationships, we're going to, and then some people, you know, may not. And I know all of these people, out of their own business self-interest, they want the deal to go through too, because it's, you know, that's how they get paid. But how overwhelming is it?
It's very overwhelming, but I don't use that word. That's part of bold. Okay. Fascinating, interesting. I don't use overwhelming. I try not to use that in my language. There's a lot of moving pieces. So that's where we come back to knowing your strengths. Okay, you guys, I couldn't do this business and be a leading agent without a transaction coordinator. Okay, when I started, I couldn't do it without a coach. I couldn't manage this process. I know that weakness in me. So I have actually never TC'd my own file, ever. It's just not my strength. I need someone else helping me manage that. Now, something I learned early on is you may have a TC, but you still have a responsibility to your client to look at all these documents. I can remember walking into my TC's office, maybe my first or second transaction, and said, do I need to actually read these title reports? And the NHD reports, you know, this is the client, the disclosure to the client. She said, yeah, you do. You're a fiduciary to them. So you have to interpret and help them. If you can't, you don't necessarily interpret, but you get the title person on the phone to interpret it for them if you don't understand it. I've made mistakes. We all make mistakes. And I think we learn from those the most. Somewhere in a process, in one of my busiest months, I had a client on a flip house, and on the title report, it wasn't my choice in title company. The title rep didn't pick it up, or the title officer didn't pick it up. I didn't pick it up. My client didn't pick it up. There were so many liens on that property that it was going to be a short sale. The flipper was in trouble. The flipper had lawsuits. There was all sorts of problems, and the flipper cut corners. I didn't pick it up. I didn't read the title report. I'm gonna admit that. And it was not a good situation. And to this day, I got to look for some wood. I'm really glad I didn't get sued, because despite my best advice for them to walk away from this deal, they stayed with it. They closed. Then they found out that although they pulled permits, they never filed the final clearances. They had plumbing, they had sewage backup into the house, like within a week of moving in, just one thing after another. I haven't kept that client. They don't particularly care for me, because what I had to do after closing, and Robert will coach you on this if you get to that, is I could no longer advise them as a fiduciary. I had to tell them to talk to an attorney. And they hate it when they hear that, because they want you to solve their problem. So, and my point on that, that's the sobering part of it is, yes, Dave, there's a lot going on here and you have to pay attention. And people wonder why real estate people make so much money on the commission, on the houses that they sell, although most real estate agents don't make a lot of money because they don't sell a lot of houses. But why we get paid what we do is because this is a big deal, okay? You've got to read this stuff. I even look at the CC&Rs, like if I have a client who I know has a big dog or plans on renting it out short term, I'm looking through those key points of the CC&Rs, as boring as they are, to make sure there's nothing there that's going to catch them up that I don't need to bring to their attention.
So, I mean, this is all helpful. That's kind of, although I'm not a C, I have a, you know, I'm an IS, but I have that kind of brain where I work that way and I like getting into the details. But what kinds of things does a transaction coordinator, like I plan on hiring one for the rest of my life, rest of my career. I don't want to do any of that. $400 is not that bad to, you know. So what kinds of things will they, other than the paperwork and all that, what kinds of things will they follow up with? What do they take off my plate?
It depends on the TC. And this might be a better conversation with your coach, because our office does have a strict regulatory environment based on my experiences elsewhere. I'm looking to see Robert's reaction as I say these things. So my experience in the year that I've been here is that our approved TCs do less than some others might, but they keep us within the letter of the law for compliance, which is a good thing. I don't ever want to be involved in a lawsuit. It just caused too much stress for me. It's got nothing to do with even money. It's just too much stress. I can't handle it. My TC, so basically the one that I use does some things that are fabulous for me. I send an opening email or open escrow letter that goes out, and I send that to her and to the lender. And then I redact some information to send to the other agent and their TC and such. And then she sends out a timeline to everybody involved and a contact list, like all the special contact information. I print out the time. She does a timeline for me and a timeline for the buyer or seller. I print that out and I put those on the file, and I use those to manage my stuff. Another TC that I've used in the office doesn't do that. She told me that was my job. I don't use her anymore. That doesn't work for me. I need somebody who keeps me online. Every TC I've ever worked with will send out reminders. Contingency releases are due today. Contingency, or your inspection releases are due in 2 days, or they're overdue. Are you prepared? And they send reminders to both parties. The biggest thing the TCs do for me is that they send disclosures to the proper parties. They check, make sure every box is signed and checked in the right places. They upload it all to Command and get me paid. They make sure all the documents are there. So when I get those long letters from Mark about the stuff that's missing, the TC goes through and fills in all those gaps for me. I do have to check and say, hey, have you got this? Or do I need to, is there something I need to do? The biggest thing is that you understand, Dave, what your TC is going to do and what they're not going to do. What they can't do is put your contracts out. They can't write your contracts. You have to do that. You have to review your contracts. You have to sign that. They can't sign for you. They have access to all your DocuSign and your zip forms and all of that, but you need to still do that, and you still need to be reading everything. They're not liable for your mistakes. So they're not checking to be sure, what they're going to say is, you wrote in a home warranty not to exceed $565, and the one that you wrote in is going to cost $600. Who's going to pay the difference? Okay. They're not going to fix it for you. They're going to bring it up to you. Okay.
Great.
Good question. So
Yes,
do you use your own dedicated person that you hire privately, or someone
No, I
that
don't have a
you go
big,
within the office?
I don't have a big enough business and team for that. I've made a decision that's not the direction that I want to go. So I use one that's approved within her office, and I'm just so blessed that she's moved over and hung her license with our office, because she's the one I used when I was a rookie too. And so I really understand how she works, and her systems are better than mine.
And then yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted I wanted to repeat what you said, that my clients understand the inspection is for X, Y, and Z, like this.
Oh yeah, this is my this is
good
my
nugget.
favorite. There's somebody said this to me, I think, in Ignite. Safety, it's all S, safety, systems, structure, and surprises.
I like that. Thank you.
Okay, that's a really important conversation to have with your clients before you enter escrow. And I say further, I say it is not a time for us to renegotiate the contract. Because I do know agents that will say, just offer whatever and then we'll, and I've had other listing agents say, we'll just offer whatever and then we'll negotiate the repairs. No, the ideal situation for me is that there's no repairs. I love a listing agent who's put forward a pre-inspection and I already know what I'm dealing with. And at the same time, if the pre-inspection's bad, it can also make the deal go away. So there's some cautions there we can get to about when you're the listing agent. That, I think, Sarah, is probably the most powerful expectation setter I have with my clients, so that I do go in confidently. I think another expectation setter you have in this market right now is talking about appraisals and what it means. There's a couple others too, escalation clauses too. What it means when you waive the appraisal or when you agree to pay the appraisal gap. Probably in my first year or second year, I had some hot listings over in Sherman Heights, and I knew that it wouldn't appraise where we were at. And so I had the opposing agent, I put in there and said, you're going to waive the appraisal contingency, which is very common what we're getting for responses right now from listing agents. And they agreed to it. And the mistake I made, I put that in the counteroffer, is I didn't have the conversation with the agent to see that they understood it. And I'm not one of the agents that, remember, I don't have a high C, so I don't usually check your DRE record to see how many homes you've sold and do all that research. I know some people do that. I will look at your number. I know what your DRE number means, whether you're newer than me or older than me, but I don't know how many deals you've done. But I didn't ask the agent if they really understood and if their client understood what it meant to waive the appraisal contingency. So when it came back low, like I expected it to, she called me and said, the appraisal's low. I said, yeah, you waived the appraisal. That meant that your client's going to pay the difference. Oh, my client can't do that. I also made the mistake that I didn't check with their lender to make sure that they could make up that gap. So those are conversations that you need to have up front so your deals don't derail. Because then I had to put that house back in escrow. And to Junior's earlier question, I had their house off the market for 3 weeks. Okay. Fortunately, I had like 14 offers. It wasn't a big deal. We did it, but I've never made that mistake again. And as a buyer's agent, I make sure that I have that conversation. I have one right now. We had, let me pull the counter offer on this one. This is a listing in North Park that's listed like 637 or something, right? And we came in at 675. Okay, and it's a VA deal, and my client has money to bring to the table. So my client understood that I knew that it would appraise for at least 650 and thought it might push to 670. So he was prepared to bring up to $25,000 to the table. Their counter wanted to bring the earnest money up to 3%. The sale's not contingent upon the appraisal. So I had a cap of how much difference he would pay. Inspection contingency gone in 7 days, loan in 17. Property sold is no repairs or credits. Sales contingent on the seller's ability to close escrow on the replacement property, and no coronavirus addendum. Okay. At that point, my client understands the appraisal thing, but it made no sense to them anymore. Because not only was he giving up his right to an appraisal, he was also giving up his right to get any repairs done, because they already had a pre-inspection report and I could already see what was wrong with the house. Okay, so you just got to set the expectations and be willing to counsel them to walk away if it doesn't make sense. And this is a good time for when you're representing sellers. Have any of you represented a listing yet? You have, Robert? Okay. I'm gonna put it out there. You guys are all going to get listings. Okay, Eric has too. You're going to get listings. You're not gonna just do buyers. However, remember this, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. Even in a hot seller's market, don't be the one to get your pig slaughtered. And that means that when the seller just becomes onerous, it needs to be a win-win or no deal. Okay? Guess what? This woman, this listing agent, she, unfortunately, the mother of the seller was an attorney, was in on the call, pushed for all of this. Guess what? They sent out all these counteroffers and everybody backed out. They scared them away. I'm sure she'll still sell the house, but she's not going to sell it for $675. Okay, makes sense? How's everybody doing?
Sounds like a great story that an attorney got involved.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I love representing attorneys, but not when they're not the client. The problem is it's not the client, it's the mother. It's that other person. I forgot about the mother, right? It's the other person that gets involved. I have a buyer right now, they're a sweet couple in the bottom of the market, and they have some neighbor who's counseling them because I can't get control of them, and I can't get them into escrow because I can't get control of them. If they weren't a referral, I would let them go. Okay, so it's those third person, you gotta listen, who's in their ear, you know? Who's doing this when they say, oh, my neighbor said, or my uncle said. You got issues. And that takes me out to another question to ask in the beginning. Is there anybody else that's gonna be involved in this decision? Okay, is somebody else gonna have to see this house before we can buy it? I love coronavirus for this because I'm not bringing all those other parties around. I'm using the virus and saying, nope, sorry, only the buying party. Nope, sorry, your cousin who's visiting from out of town can't come. There's some good parts of Corona. Okay, all right. Robert, I hope you keep.
So let's say the mother-in-law, or I'm sorry.
Go ahead, David.
So let's say that's the case. The mother is involved or the neighbor is significant. Well, let's say it's the mother. So if she really is a player, if she's really a player, do you just pull her in and do a three-way call?
Yep. I'm going to build rapport with the player. I'm going to build rapport with the person giving gift money. I'm going to build rapport with the person co-signing. If I'm the listing agent, this is actually something I bring to the table. I use that, remember that vacation rental property management background? When I have investor-owned property with tenants in, I build rapport with the tenant. Okay, I got that covered. I know how to make them want to get the house nice and clean and let me show it and get done with this process. So your negotiation skills are everything.
With the neighbor, if they, I mean, I would kind of like.
Oh, I blew it with the neighbor in a showing the other day. I blocked his parking by mistake, okay? I already have them totally irritated. Thankfully, we don't like that house, but yeah, the neighbors, absolutely.
Well, I mean, like the neighbor.
I take a risk, actually, Dave. There's something I do with my buyers. When we're out there in the neighborhood and the neighbors are being a little nosy, I'll smile and I'll ask them, and they always want to know, are you buying this house? Yeah, we're thinking about it. And this is risky, but I represent my clients. I want to know the truth. What's your favorite thing about living here? And then they open up. They either love it or they're going to tell you, that guy's a jerk and this and that. I've had a few of them that it's negative, but I'd rather my client know that up front in making the decision. That's not having commission breath. And then other times the neighbors sell the house for you and it's great.
That's what I do when I buy a house for me. Talk to the neighbors, knock on the doors. But going back, like say the neighbor in the previous example where your clients say, well, but the neighbor's consulting them and they put the neighbor over you. Do you
get to that neighbor?
So let me ask you, I mean, my strategy, just kind of like from a coaching, how I work with people, I would just kind of get in there with my buyer and say, and find out what their real desire is here and why they're taking their advice so much. And, do you want them to make the decision, be part of this decision? I mean, I would get them to the point where they're like, where they're really coming from at a deep level. Mm-hmm. And and I would imagine most of the time, no, this is our decision, but we trust this guy.
Right.
So let's say it's like that. I would probably ask, well, do you want them, if that person has that much weight in the decision, I'd want them in the meeting so I can actually talk to them.
Yeah, and in an ideal world, but the truth is people are going to have their trusted advisors and their influencers in their lives. So yes, the better you know them, the better, the more likely you are to have that influence. The gal we putting in escrow this morning, I have told her, okay, I know she's got other trusted advisors, and I'll call them that. And we've actually called them her board of directors. If we have the luxury of sleeping on it, I'll say, okay, I want you to sleep on this decision, consult with those people who are important to you that you trust, and let's come back in the morning. In this market, we've lost a lot of luxuries and some of that rapport building because we're doing it like this. I'm not sitting in the office with you for an hour. Okay. But you're right. Yeah, if you can bring them into the decision making, sure, bring them into the decision making. A lot of times people don't tell you everything. You got to listen hard, which is hard for a talker like me. So the key on this girl that I got lucky finding out by listening was she is living with her now ex-boyfriend. They broke up during COVID. Her living situation is untenuous. So was she willing to throw extra money at this offer? More than what I would have advised? Yes. Because she needs to get the heck out of this condo. And that comes to letting them talk, letting them disclose, finding out what that real motivation is. But some people will hold it close to the vest and will never tell you that. They might even not tell you that, they're in the midst of a divorce, or, they've lost custody of their kids, or it's domestic abuse or whatever. So, okay. All right, it's at almost 11. I've been told we take a break at 11. You guys want to do that? Robert, how long do we take? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? You're muted, buddy.
Be back at 11:05, just long enough to play some Madonna.
All right. Next time I want to give you my request, my list request. It might scare you. People aren't always what they appear to be. Okay, I'll be back.
Right. I think your name came up last night in the game. I think it might have been about dance music. I forget which one it was.
Hip hop.
What's that?
I like dirty rap, hip hop. Yeah, the nastier the better.
No, I remember people's names, but I don't connect in the memory of what it was.
Yeah.
Except for Marty, because I know Marty from this. Hey, Melinda, so would you say the people that more
I just muted all you guys. Go for a break.
Time to celebrate. Come on. and turn this world around. Sometimes
All right, everybody, great class today. You're learning a lot, I hope. You're getting some great advice from our great instructors. So without further ado, Melinda, get back into it. It's all yours.
Hang on, let me get my dog resituated. Come on. I forgot. We had a breach of security here. All right, Junior, are you back? You had a question. Did I repeat what? And it said, can I say that again? I don't know if I repeated what you needed. I don't know if he's back yet. Okay. Does anybody have any questions from that first hour? And anything that you're, I should also ask, is there anything that you're dying that I cover that I need to make sure that I cover too, that I haven't hit on yet?
I want to ask a question.
Yes,
We
Robert.
talked about getting the influencers in on.
Mhm.
Have you ever dealt with an influencer parent that maybe was from the Midwest and bought their house in the 1970s and paid $20,000 for it, and now their kids are going to buy a $500,000 home in San Diego?
Of course I have. Of course I have, yes. And not had access to them. So some of that comes with the frank conversation with the child that's now an adult of, are your parents going to live in this house with you? Some of it comes very early on and asking, you know, who else is involved in the decision, and just listening and knowing they're from the Midwest. And I've got, let me, they're not from the Midwest. They actually live in LA and they're another culture from ours. I have one in, not in escrow, but we're buying right now. They're a referral from an LA agent. They're a different nationality in which negotiation is standard. They're in wealthy investors in Los Angeles with investment property, and they're about the parents are about my age. So I know their experience is, I used to invest. I used to never offer anything more than 10% under ask. Okay. And and they're also giving the gift money. This is instead of a big wedding. Okay. And I know they have a lot of influence, but I don't have any influence with them. I have no meet with them, no access to them yet, except I do have influence with the agent who referred them to me, who is friends with them. So I've got to work the back angle of that where I can. And I also have to have the conversation with the kids who are buying. And that's actually on my schedule for 6 o'clock tonight, another Zoom, because I can feel already the parental influence is not in today's reality. It's in whenever they bought their last investment property in LA, which is probably about 5 years ago. And it's also having these kids look at the property as an investment and not where they're going to live. So they're not looking at it enough of what it's going to mean to them. You know, they're playing too much to the parents' motivations. So I've got to have that heart to heart with the kids. Okay, is this just a property you're buying to rent out in 2 years? Or are you going to live in this for 5 to 7 and then move on? And which is a greater priority, because we can't hit both of them.
That's a great question to ask. I don't even think it's in the script book, or maybe it is. Who else is involved in the transaction or making a decision?
Yeah, who else is involved? And the minute there's gift money involved, or there's a referral like this one. So I didn't even know there was gift money at first, but it was a referral from somebody who knows the parents. You know that they're going to be heavily involved in that. And not even if they're not, you just out of respect have to do that. Plus, you guys, a lot of my business is agent to agent referral. So to some extent that agent's involved too. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. The young kids who are totally unrealistic right now, and somebody's telling them, if it weren't for the agent, because of my relationship with her, I would let them go. Okay, but I've also had to bring that agent in. Last year, I thought I had my hardest client, 2 aerospace Boeing engineers buying a downtown condo for an investment, a 1031. I thought I'd gotten through that, my hardest, most detail oriented. And I'm always like, yeah, give me your engineers. I got this. I'm great at this. Yeah, they're detail oriented, no problem. And then another person from that same office sent me somebody that was coming back from overseas, a government engineer, coming back from Japan. And he turned out to be the most challenging I've ever had. So much so that I called the agent and said, David, I know you told me he's detail oriented, but I can't even wrangle him. He's hired an inspector off of Yelp, who's the worst inspector that I've ever met in my entire life. And he's going to derail this whole deal. He had to ask me how to turn on the oven. I don't know how to turn on the damn oven. Okay. I don't have the answers to that. He was the worst in my life. And he's like, you're just going to have to let him make the mistakes and be there to pick up the pieces, because he's so detail oriented that, you know, he didn't see Yelp reviews for the inspector you recommended, because my inspector's just so busy inspecting, he's not working on the Yelp reviews. One of my weaknesses. And, you know, you just keep going from there. You learn. Robert, do you have anything to add on that, on managing the other party, managing the Midwestern parents?
No, but you brought up another point, is the cultural guidance too, is you need to understand, and it's nothing about the culture, but if they come from a culture where it's about bargaining.
You have to respect that,
Yeah.
but you also can't assume that. So interestingly, I have a buy sell right now, and my client was married to somebody of a bargaining culture. Okay. And she noticed that the owners of the one she's buying are of that same culture. And she wanted to come in at a ridiculous number, one that I was embarrassed to represent because she knew they wanted to bargain. And at that point, I had to say to her, I understand these cultural differences and that you feel that that's that, but you have to understand that they also have an agent representing them that's educated them on the process the same as you. And if we come in at that number, you're not going to get this house. I need you to, and this is bold language, I need you to trust me and come in closer to the offer. Because our end goal is this. I said, because you're only going to come here, know what your end goal is. I don't have to even know it. Because if that's as much as you're going to pay, that's fine. Negotiating is different today than it was then. Because you can't assume that because somebody's of a certain culture that they're going to behave in that way. You just have to understand and respect it if they do. Which brings me to something that I actually had written several pages later. It's another bold law. And that is your job in this 3 weeks or 4 weeks, more than ever, is to keep the emotion between the lines. It doesn't matter how upset you get. Have I been driven to drink? Have I cried? Have I been mad? Have I recently chewed out another agent? Yes, it doesn't matter, and I don't do that, okay? You have to absorb all of the emotion for your client and take it out for them and make it business. Yes, we use emotion to get them to make decisions, but we also need to take the emotion out when they get an ultra low offer. And when they say, I'm not going to respond to that, that's insulting. Or when they get that really yucky counteroffer back, okay, that feels really crappy, like the person's just taking the screw and going like this, and they're feeling like it's personal. You have to take that out and say, okay, what's your motivation? Oh, you're PCSing here September 11th with 2 dogs. We're going to be homeless and we're going to run through your savings at the Navy Lodge really fast if we don't get into escrow. So let's set aside the emotion and realize it's business. I also talk when I take a listing that this is a product. The minute we put it on the market, you'd have to now think of this as your house, not your home. It's a product we're selling. And do I use the word home when I'm with the buyer? Sure, I do. But when we're in this negotiation, if it's going badly and they might need to detach, I'll start to use the word that it's a house again. And I'm sure Robert could coach you even more on the NLP around those things. But it's you know, yes, emotion makes us act, but we also remember the fiduciary.
It's chucking them up. It's like when it gets to the broker level on a transaction, usually it's because both agents are at each other's throat. And they haven't managed the emotions well enough. And so I just reach out to the broker on the other side and say, hey, let's work together to see what we can do to help everybody come to the solution of what they both want. They want a buyer to buy the home and a seller to get it sold. And that's really
Never mind the agent emotion. I have a couple agents in my phone that may not have very nice things attached in the phone. I need to be sure that if I ever forward that information. So like, and there's one in particular, I've lost my cool on 2 agents that I can recall in 7 years. Okay. One was very early on. And unfortunately my client was there to hear it because she could also hear his side. And he started personally insulting me and pulling me down, and it triggered me and I snapped on him. He's in my phone, and whenever I show one of his listings, I pray my client hates it, because I don't ever want to do another transaction with him. But you know, now 7 years in, it might actually be a good thing because he couldn't rattle me now. Okay. You know, he couldn't rattle me. Another one was just a week ago, and you may have seen my Facebook post, and it was an agent who ignored the COVID guidelines, let herself into the house, didn't use the proper protective equipment. Just one mistake after another. And I really did light into her because my client is immune compromised. It's a big deal. Okay, and it could have cost me the listing. And then also the sell side, $2.2 million worth of business. Yeah, I let into her. And then after she said, can I talk? She said, my client loved the house. And am I being, yeah, I'm live, huh? Okay. And I said, oh crap. Oh crap. As it turns out, she never came back with an offer or anything, but keep the emotion between the lines. Okay, and always, always be nice. Okay, so these are a couple things. It's not where I was going to go right away on this material, but while we're talking about emotion, let me give you examples. When you're the listing, okay, it's a seller's market right now, and when you're the listing agent, it's easy to kind of be a jerk, okay, and make it kind of hard for buyer's agents to show the property. You know, you want pre-approval up front, you want PED up front, you won't even make the appointment before you have those. I'm trying to show 6 houses, I can't get my appointments together, and you're giving a 15-minute time slot and there's 2 hours that you can show it on Saturday, you know. Try to put yourself in the other agent's shoes, because you do want the home easy to show while you're protecting your client from coronavirus and respecting all of that, but don't be a jerk. I'll say this over and over on either side. Don't be a jerk. When you're in that position of power, don't be a jerk about it. You know, try to work with the people that you can. And same on the buyer side. If it all comes down, if all things are equal, and I'm the listing agent, and you've been a jerk, do you think it's going to impact your client's ability to get the house? Because my clients trust me, so they're going to ask me, you know, which offer do you think? And I'm going to tell them the truth. And I've even had this with investors. They care too. You know, even when you're doing flips, I'll say, you know what? I would rather be in escrow with that agent. They're really professional. I just actually advocated for a KW agent that in Gary Kent's team in La Jolla. I'm like, he's professional. I know he's in for a win-win situation. I know that they, you know, have really coached their clients. They're going to ask my opinion, and often they're going to go with that, who I'd rather work with. Because my goal is not only to get them the most money for their house, it's to close the deal. That's what this whole session is about. It's not enough to get into escrow. Guess what, you guys? My deals rarely fall out of escrow. I've got a really, really good retention rate. Guess what they fall out of escrow for? Surprises. Okay, something goes bad. It's usually to do with the house. They rarely even fall out of escrow for loan or appraisal issues, because I don't like my clients to overbid on something that if they can't bring the money to the table and they're not prepared to do it, we're not going in just to get in the deal. Who needs to waste that time? I don't need to go on another inspection and go through all this process once I open escrow. There's a ton to do. Who needs to waste that time? Life's way too short. Open escrow so you can close and then negotiate win-win to close them. Make sense? Okay. I want to go through a couple things. In your materials, they have these checklists for buyers, agent, contract to close checklist, and listing. And I have to tell you the truth. The buyers is almost irrelevant, their checklist. You're going to have to make your own checklist, and it's going to be growing. I highly recommend you do Google Docs, and that it be a living, breathing document, and that you print it out, and this is what you do when it happens, okay? And you live by that. And also make yourself templates for things like, Dave, I think I've shared it with you before, like I have an open escrow letter template. I have an offer template like that. Things that I'm always gonna include with the buyer when I'm making an offer. I have what happens. I used to have an assistant, so I have some systems of what happens, but it's changed because of COVID dramatically, what has to be done, like in the showing process. The listing one's a little bit better. I recommend you work with your coach. They probably have templates for you. I recommend that you start and create them, call them templates. Even, I think you can even in Google Docs, make them templates and create your own and copy paste and use them and check them. Okay. Because there are times that you'll forget. A little tip on one that I still forget, and I think it's because I'm not looking at my template, is in condos and townhomes. I always forget about which mailbox is it? Did I get the mailbox key? And sometimes, I don't forget anymore, which parking spaces. Okay, your client's gonna need that information. You're gonna end up 3 days after you've closed, and they're gonna be like, which mailbox is mine? And then you're gonna be running over with mailbox keys, and you're gonna be bothering the other agent who's now less responsive. So make sure you have those things in your checklist. And privately, if you need to know what mine are, I can share them with you. I think Dave knows this too. I'm a little slow though on sharing things like Google Docs. Okay. All right. We're going to move to the problem solving. Any questions? Nobody? Okay. Some things that can happen. So it says here, your turn to be a problem solver. Contract to close issues. I have a couple notes in here. One of them is about earnest money, and this is kind of contract issues, things you need to understand. Once you open escrow, earnest money is at risk. I'm sure Robert has dealt with earnest money issues. I've never had earnest money contested yet that somebody has tried to keep my client's earnest money. In California, we've got some pretty cool things that are, and you need to understand this so that an experienced agent like me doesn't take advantage of your lack of knowledge, especially if you're on the listing side. Okay, so you need to understand, first off, in California, they can only hold back they can only keep 3% of earnest money, even if you put down more than that. Okay, but I wouldn't want my 5% earnest money sitting in an escrow account in contention. Okay, but know that, because your client's going to ask you about that, about how much of my money's at risk, what happens to that money. I think there's two other really important things you need to understand about the contracting contingencies is that California is an active contingency removal state. So your contingency for inspections expired or it comes up 17 days and it comes and goes and you haven't done anything, which is not good. Okay. And you're the buyer's agent. Well, guess what? The law is in your favor here because the listing agent needed to give you a notice to perform to actually invoke that in that their client could then keep the earnest money. And then you typically have 48 hours to remove the contingency or lose the property or lose the money. So in some other states, it's much messier. If you miss that date, guess what? Your client's money's on the line. So we're a little fortunate there, but it has created an environment where we can get lazy about asking for extensions for contingencies and delivering notices to perform. So the first time I received a notice to perform from a listing agent, I'm not sure if I had taken bold yet. I took it personally because they sent it to me 2 days before the contingency was up. Well, guess what? That actually is an awesome listing agent who is taking care of their client's needs, because that ensures that I release that contingency on time or I ask for an extension. So to understand the contingencies and understand the 3 contingencies and what those dates mean. So your first contingency is your inspection contingency. So everybody thinks of that as just physical inspections. That's all your disclosures. That's everything. That's your Avid and that's the other agent's Avid. Guess what? If your Avid is late, that messes up the contingencies. If you as the listing agent don't get your Avid in during that time, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that the buyer has 5 more days to walk away from the deal from when you release your Avid, because that's new information. Am I right, Robert?
With the Avid, the law changed this year in California that even if the buyers released all the contingencies and either agent has not submitted an Avid, it can go all the way through to close of escrow. They can walk away with no repercussions.
Okay, it's important. I used to be a lazy Avid person and do it at the end. I didn't understand the legal implications of it. So it's really important. And it's really important that you understand these things, because if there's a new any new disclosure resets that, even if you've released those contingencies, okay? And that can be used to the advantage of the person who understands the contract better.
What's
Okay.
an AVID? I forgot what AVID stands for. What is it?
Agent Visual Inspection Disclosures. So I used to wait as long as possible to do it because I felt like that was a more current view of the property. But then I started to understand that it was better to just do it either when I take the listing or during the inspection. Because then it's done, it's on file, it's disclosed. So typically as the buyer's agent, I'll do it when I'm there for inspection, because I do go to my inspections now. When I had an assistant, she was licensed, she went to inspections and did the AVID. And if you end up in that situation, you need to make sure you have an additional agent. Mark will keep you on that you have them authorized as an agent in the transaction. And as a listing agent, I used to wait longer. Now I'll take it as soon as I can on the listing. Usually like the first day, like before Broker Caravan, or we don't have those now, but the first showings or something, I'll do it then. I don't typically take it at the listing appointment because there's so much going on that. And right now listing appointments are virtual anyway. Okay. And the agent visual inspection, I think that's something you should talk about with your mentor or your coach about what that means and what you can write in it or should write in it and what you shouldn't write in it and all of that, what kind of language. You have to be careful, like saying, oh, there's termites or there's wood rot. Well, you're not an expert in that. So you can say, you know, there's dropping, some sort of droppings or dust or whatever, but they'll coach you on that. Okay, so 3 contingencies. So the Junior's asking, there's 3 contingency phases. So the first is inspection, but I want to emphasize inspection is all the disclosures. So it's seller disclosures, SPQ, TDS, AVIDs, NHD, HOA CC&Rs, preliminary title, your physical inspections, all of that. They can basically walk away for any reason during that time. Gophers in the yard, neighbors, traffic, crime. That's when they check Megan's Law database. That's when they check Crime Stopper or crime mapping. That's when they check grade schools. All of that, they can walk away because they don't like anything during that phase. The second contingency is typically your appraisal. There's not always an appraisal, but it's typically your appraisal, and that's usually 17 days as well. So if it doesn't come in at appraised value, and all of these contingencies, we're going to have a couple different scenarios of things we can do. I'll cover that in a second. Okay, so appraisal. And the third contingency is the loan. And those are the 3 things that derail deals, okay? It's usually the first or the appraisal. And there's ways to bulletproof your deal to not go against those. Let me talk about bulletproofing before I talk about negotiation. So if you are the listing agent, you can, depending on the age and the condition of the house, you can run pre-inspections and do termite inspections beforehand. The caution of that is once you've done those inspections, all of those become part of your disclosures. So as soon as you know anything, it's got to be disclosed. And remember to tell your sellers at your first meeting, if you have to ask me, do I need to disclose X? Your answer is always going to be yes. Better to over disclose than under disclose, even if it derails your deal. Because none of us want to be in lawsuits because we didn't disclose it. Okay. So that's one way as the listing agent to keep it from derailing. As the buyer's agent and the listing agent, we're going to get into financing. So as the buyer's agent, you need to work with good lenders. All right. You need to, sometimes you can't always control who your buyers are working with. It's not your choice. But you need to have a repertoire of people who direct underwrite, who you can text on Saturday for pre-approval letters, who you can get in contact with throughout the transaction, okay, that you can trust. And I absolutely trust anybody with Movement Mortgage. I have worked with them a lot. That's not who I do most of my business with right now, but they were former Movement Mortgage people. They have a great, great program. Anybody that they tell you is ready to go is ready to go. And that's what you need in this market right now. So that's the first step.
What was the third thing you said? Direct underwriting. I can text them on Saturday.
Oh, that you can text them and that you can contact them throughout the duration of the transaction. So sometimes you're going to have to use a mortgage broker. Jumbo loans are much trickier and harder right now. So you may have self-employed people that there's too many overlays with movement, or it's not the right interest rates. You may have a client with high net worth that's going to work with a big bank. So it's always good to actually have some contacts at Chase and Wells Fargo and Union and these other banks that like developing the rapport. When you don't have a lot of business, is a good time to develop vendor relationships. And those people who pay attention to you when you don't have a lot of business are people who you want to keep in your board of directors, in your pocket or portfolio as you go forward. I have a lot of loyalty to people who stuck with me when I was a rookie and they took chances and educated me. And have stuck with me when my business has been down. Those people who call me the minute I get a listing, it's like, where were you when I was struggling 6 months ago? Okay, so develop these relationships now. That I know they're busy, but they'll teach.
I have a potential buyer, and they're really like, the wife's dad said, oh, definitely use USAA, so a big bank. And they want a 30 to 45 day loan for escrow. You can't really ever talk to them. You call up and you get a different person every time. What can I say about how unattractive an offer can be with, a 45-day escrow and those kinds of
I
things?
tell them the truth. I just tell them the hard truth. As a listing agent, if all things are equal and I see a loan from USAA or Navy Fed, I haven't had good experience closing those on time. I tell them, fortunately, I have stories to tell now of, I asked USAA, can you close quickly? Then this gets me into bulletproofing. So if I have a buyer who's going to insist on using USAA, okay, I'm going to call their USAA rep and say, okay, I'm going to be taking this buyer out. First, I'm going to make sure they have all the documentation. Okay, I'm going to make sure that they are underwritten and that they've looked at their tax returns and their credit, not just pulled credit or just whatever they stated. Okay. And then I'm going to say, all right, I usually write my offers really tight. Let's talk about what you can do. I have a lender who can do 21-day VA loans, and the USAA is going to go, yeah, I can close really fast. I can close in 45 days. I heard that a year ago. I can't even imagine what they close in right now. I'm like, 45 days? I can't get an offer accepted for 45 days. You guys, this doesn't do me any good. And then I'm going to go back and have that conversation with my client that, hey, I talked to your lender. You can use whoever you want, but I need you to trust me that I can do more for you if you'll talk to these guys. And I also bring up the money thing, because there is, especially if you're dealing with people who have influence from parents or who are older, there are a lot of times before RESPA that there was a lot of graft. Okay, there were a lot of underhanded deals going on, and people recommended lenders because they were getting, car payments or cocaine or whatever. The title industry was deep in drugs, trust me, and deep into like box seats at the ball games and all that kind of stuff. So I tell my clients up front, anyone I recommend to you is because they do a good job for you first. It's not because they take me to lunch or coffee. I said, now, most of the people I recommend to you, I've also become friends with, and they're part of my life. You'll see them. If you're on my Facebook, you'll see them with me because we've just worked together so much. Honestly, my lender is like my work husband. I joke with his wife. I know her well, because I talk to him more than I talk to the other man in my life. And I'm just really upfront with my clients, and they appreciate that. I think through COVID, all the coaching and everything you've had, probably if there's something that you've learned to take away, is people want authenticity. And I'm authentic. That's what I bring to the table. Okay. You're just never going to see, you're always going to see the same me. I'm authentic. And it doesn't matter who or what you are, be authentic to you. For me, that's telling it up front. Sometimes it could be softened. And then I'm going to work with whoever they choose and do the best for them that I can. But if their lender sucks, our deal might fall apart. But also if their lender stinks, I'm going to not make promises I can't keep. So even this week, I called this particular lender that I like to work with and asked him, I said, okay, what can we honestly do? He said, you can't write these short deals in now. I can't close it. I can't do a VA deal in 21 days. I can't do an appraisal in 14. You're going to end up disappointed in me if you write it that way, and your other agent's going to end up disappointed. So know what they can do on both sides. So if you're the listing agent, so this brings us into bulletproofing the transaction if you're the listing agent. How many of you have seen in the MLS buyer to cross qualify with so-and-so? Okay. A lot of more experienced buyers and wealthier buyers will really balk at that. I'm not sharing my information with somebody else. You're not telling me who to go with. Well, guess what? It's standard practice in San Diego among the best listing agents to have you cross qualify. And that's because pre-approval letters are worth the paper they're printed on. And we know they're electronic and they're not even printed. So my lenders are I'm not going to ask them to cross qualify all 14 offers. I'm going to ask them to cross qualify the top 1 or 2. And they are going to talk to the other person's lender, not to the buyer, because we're not trying to steal business from other lenders. Trust me, that'll come around. You're going to have the lender call, they're going to talk to each other, and they're going to verify that that buyer is bona fide. And I'm also maybe going to try to get an upper hand by my lender asking some questions like, hey, okay, we're going to have no appraisal contingency, or we're going to have an escalation clause. Can this buyer afford that? Do they have the money? I'm also going to speak as the listing agent. I'm going to speak directly to their lender, and I'm going to ask those questions. And good lenders won't tell me much. And then lenders with loose lips will tell me too much. And I've had lenders with loose lips tell me how high that buyer can actually go. So yeah, I've countered higher because I knew they could. That's another reason that, Dave, I mentioned that I want to be able to text them and say, I need a pre-approval letter for exactly the amount that I'm going to offer. Because I have clients sometimes who don't buy as much as they can afford. So like I have a client right now approved to $750, but they want to buy at $650. I'm not going to send a pre-approval letter on a property that I'm bidding $650 that says they can afford $750, because that they're gonna say, oh, they can afford it, go higher, especially if they share it with their seller. Okay, so I'm trying to keep my cards as close to the vest as possible, protecting my client's fiduciary interests. Does that make sense?
Perfectly.
Okay, so that's as the listing agent. And as the buyer's agent, I'm trying to direct them to work with quality lenders. I'm encouraging them to go ahead and get other quotes and bids. And I'm also counseling them that it doesn't impact their credit if it's in a short period of time, because they're all worried about that. I'm also, I have to confess, I've not used Keller Mortgage. I know other people around the country who have and swear by it and love it. I'm honestly a little afraid to in our market, because I do like to control this aspect of the transaction, making sure it will close. I do know also, though, that it's probably important that I offer that option for them, because there are some savings of money. Right now, I think Gary's underwriting it, honestly. I think him and his investors are the ones that are paying that money back to help us have that tool. So know what your options are. Your coach and broker Bob can step in on this. I'm not the agent that recommends 3 of everything to cover to CYA. I recommend those people that I trust and I know can get the deal done. And I sleep well at night about that, because I know that that's what I'm doing. I'm not afraid if the time ever comes that things fall apart and go bad, that I'm ever going to be implemented for any ethical violations, because I know where my ethics are. And I feel confident that if you looked into my records, you'd be with that. But if you don't have, if you don't have those strong relations, and it doesn't matter, just give them 3. But these people are looking to you for guidance. They want a strong agent. They may not want a bull in a china shop, but they want a strong agent. They want someone who knows more than they do. Because remember, they've got the internet. So they can look up on Yelp too. So if you haven't worked with somebody, let's say we're recommending painters, right? Or a foundation expert. If you haven't worked with them, be honest about it. And that's when you give 3. Hey, I asked at my office and these are 3 foundation guys. I haven't worked with them. Let's give them a call, see which one gels for you. Make sense? Okay. Let's
I'm
see.
trying to like hear clearly your animal analogies. So it just hits, it misses me all the time. You said a bull in a what?
Bull, oh, sorry. Yeah, there's probably a cultural thing. A bull in a china shop. Okay, so picture a bull with his horns and he's going around and the place is full of delicate china.
Oh, okay.
And you get in the china shop and you get up there and like you're just breaking everything because they're just so forceful.
Got it.
Okay?
Got it.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And like going after some of our panels recently, I think that's a really good point. So thanks for asking.
No problem.
And we have to remember San Diego's so multicultural that people won't always get those different analogies. Okay. Go ahead. Yes, Sarah.
So when it comes to sort of vetting lenders, especially, do you have, I mean, you've obviously gotten to this point where you have people that you trust and you know because you have so many experiences with a variety. But if you're a new agent and you don't have, 7 to 10 transactions where you kind of feel like who's good and whatnot, is it just kind of a series of questions that you ask primarily? Does it have to do with like speed, or is it just like your own experience on how they respond to you? Like, how would you kind of get through that point where you don't have the experience, but you want to set somebody up with somebody, that is good?
I think, Sarah, that's where you trust KW. That's where you trust that your office has done that vetting for you. I started out with the people like Movement that were in my office because my office had done that vetting. And then the Keller Mortgage. And then you're going to need a third one in your portfolio that is probably a broker that can do deals that Movement might not be able to do, or that Keller Mortgage might not be able to do. And that comes and goes. Oh, they're like, you could spend all day long meeting with lenders. And I think the other thing I'll caution you too is not to get too set in your ways, to always be open to, because I have other lenders, and you'll probably do deals with these other lenders, to be courteous to them and to say, well, tell me what you specialize in, and then just drop that in your notes and command about what they're good at. Oh, this person does, no doc loans, or this one's hard money, or something like that. And just, you'll see people you gel with. Like I had, when we were doing open houses, I've always liked open houses as lead gen. And I had a newer lender that would go and do them with me. But then at some point I stopped using him because I felt like I was using him just as a bodyguard. Okay. The truth was, two things. He couldn't close for whatever reason. He couldn't convert anybody that I brought in. So I learned that about him. Nice guy. I enjoyed his company. He was a great bodyguard, big, tall guy that used to be an Olympian. But at some point you have to say, this is business and this isn't fair. Remember the win-win? Same thing with your title reps. Be careful not to use them. There's certain title reps that will give you things that are kind of in the gray area of helping you to prospect. But in the end, you need to be doing business with them. I get booties from everyone, but I'm not going to call and ask the person I have no intention of writing a policy with and ask them for booties. Okay, you got to conduct yourself with the vendors the way you want them to conduct with you, and be careful of if people promise things that are too good to be true. They probably are too good to be true. Okay. There are some crappy lenders, and don't ignore the bank people. It's nice to have a couple numbers at Chase that you can call, even if they're not the person that you're going to work with. It's kind of nice to say, hey, I have somebody with one of your wealth management accounts in there, and I can't get a hold of someone. Okay. All right. I talked about contingencies, disclosures, notice to perform. Let's see. So it talks about contract to close issues, inspections and repairs. So I want to talk a little bit. We talked about loan approval and funding. I want to talk about a little bit, Hope, did you have a question? No. I want to talk a little bit about VA and FHA. I think it's important in San Diego, especially in Metro, because we deal with so many veterans. Who in the room are veterans or mill spouses? Anybody? A couple of you. Okay. You're probably going to do a lot of VA business. So it's important that you become an advocate, and the rest of you, it's important that you understand the truth. And you're going to run into this more with older agents, the agents who have been in the business for 30 years, than newer ones in San Diego. Agents who think VA is somehow harder to close and that VA appraisals and inspections are somehow harder. They really aren't, okay? And that VA, FVAC, which is the FHA, VA amendatory clause are somehow onerous. They're not, okay? They're just reinstating what's already in your appraisal, restating what's already in the appraisal clause. So FHA and VA appraisers are looking for safety, basic things, non-peeling paint, strapped water heaters, carbon monoxide detectors, self-closing steel doors to the garage. You will occasionally get a crappy one, okay? I had to paint someone's patio cover because he said it was peeling paint. And I said, it's stain and it's old. He said, do you have proof it's stained? Did you test it? And my veteran, who was selling to a veteran, my veteran had already moved to Orange County and got emotional and dug his heels in and said, I'm not doing anything. And we're, getting close to close. And the other veteran didn't have, we couldn't close the deal without that thing getting painted. So I spent a Sunday painting the damn patio cover. Okay, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Today I would hire somebody, but I was a rookie and had no money. So no, this is important. So learn what the VA cares about and what inspectors care about. Talk to your inspectors and interview them. Go to your inspections and ask questions when they're done, what you need to look for. Go to those appraisals when you're the listing agent and see what they're looking for and learn and absorb. So I know that if a house is older than 1968, I'm going to have the pipes scoped. All right, that's got nothing to do with VA, but that's something else. I know when I'm looking at houses, if it's got peeling paint, if the garage door's not closing, and if it doesn't have a heat source, it's not going to pass a VA or FHA inspection. So I know some properties are not going to be appropriate for my VA clients, and I can tell them that it's not going to be appropriate for you. I found it's best to call the listing home, find out that the home is VA when it's not in the MLS because they think it's hard. That's another good one. Okay, so homes actually don't have to have VA approval. As far as like, a lot of times agents won't put VA in the financing, and sometimes there's a reason. So I will call a listing agent. If it's a detached home, I'll call a listing agent. And if it's not obvious to me why it doesn't say VA, I'll say, is there a reason that this is not VA? Is there something that's going to cause it not to be? Oh, no, I just didn't put that in there. Okay. Condos, listing agents just don't know, or they're lazy. So work with the lender and learn how to look up if a VA, if condo is VA approved or not. And if you can't figure it out, have a lender that'll do it for you. And I know that the lenders in the office will do that for you. Okay, I know that. I know Ed will. I know Amanda will. They'll do a great job. And sometimes you can use that to your advantage. The negative is that when you set up a search on the MLS, you want so desperately, especially when it's townhomes and condos, to limit it to VA. In the market right now, you really can't, because your client's going to want to see houses that aren't VA approved if you send them ones that aren't VA approved or condos. In the market right now with so little inventory, leave the VA field out, and you're going to have to hand look at them and check them. Because I've been able to find condos that we thought weren't appropriate for my VA clients by checking to see if they were VA approved, and then educating the listing agent. Hey, guess what? This is actually VA approved. Okay. Questions on VA or FHA? All right.
Wait, so does FHAs also have similar, like, I didn't even know this was an issue at all until now. Does FHA also have like what's approved and what isn't for them?
Not as much as VA, but the FHA, like, they're still going to need a heat source. They're still going to need smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, things like that. But they don't have, the process is different to appeal their appraisal if it comes back low. I honestly don't do as many FHA deals as I do VA. I probably do VA 10 to 1. So I don't have as much personal experience in that.
But those things, shouldn't they be in any inspection? I mean, doesn't anybody want
But
to source and,
appraiser is not an
safety
inspector.
items?
In a normal deal, the appraiser is not an inspector. An appraiser is looking for value. And they might call out something that's really onerously negative. But an appraiser for VA is doing a visual inspection. Not extensive visual inspection, but they're inspecting for things that would trigger safety and systems and structure for a veteran. Because the VA is insuring, I think it's 25% of the home value, of the mortgage value. Okay, so they're protecting the VA's interest as the insurer. And in theory, they're protecting the safety of the veterans.
Mhm.
Okay. They're not doing it to be a pain. These are basic functioning things of a house, but there are some properties that just won't do it. Now, one thing to know for VA and FHA for attached properties, part of that approval process actually has to do with the complex and how much is owner occupied. Because a non-owner occupied property is at a much higher risk of default than owner occupied. Why does VA and FHA care about that? Because if we hit a recession like we did in the last Great Recession, and you're more than 50% non-owner occupied and they start defaulting on HOA fees and defaulting on loans, it brings down the value of the entire complex. And then the VA and FHA loan is at risk. It's not VA people don't default on their loans. The default rate is the lowest of any of them. But because think about it, especially if you're active duty, right? If you start to default on your finances, it affects your job because that stuff all goes into your security clearances and things. But anyway, so it's protecting the investment. It's not a bad thing. And sometimes you have to do some education. I'm pretty passionate about educating VA. And occasionally you'll have an agent that just doesn't understand it, or you'll have a client. So in San Diego, VA to VA is very good. There's a lot of brotherly love. And occasionally though, a veteran or an active duty will have had a bad experience. I had one that they did not want to accept our VA offer because they had their PCS orders changed midstream once and backed out, had to back out of the deal. And ironically, my client that was offering on it was offering because their orders had just been changed. They were supposed to go to Oregon, or Washington. They were in escrow and a new construction in Washington. So new construction is very easy to back out of. And we did manage to close the deal. And that's the only time veteran to veteran has been a negative. Okay. All right.
I have a question about loans.
Yes, sir.
Do you think like if there was like say 3 offers in a home, there was conventional, FHA, and a VA, do you think that the type of loan is taken into consideration when accepting an offer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And depends on the agent's skill and understanding that. Yeah, people prefer conventional. They prefer people with more skin in the game, the earnest money. Sometimes VA loans, if it's a 0 down, I've had earnest money as low as $500, and I've had people make past judgment on the emotion. The sellers say they don't have any skin in the game. I've even had them say they shouldn't be buying a house if they don't have more saved than that. And I want to say, my emotion wants to say, how dare you judge that person that's gone off to war for you, right? This is a benefit of their service, but I don't. But then that's when I get into, well, you know what? When was the last time you held earnest money back? Have you talked about that with your client? Because in all my years, I've never kept anyone's earnest money or defaulted. So you have that conversation, but it absolutely becomes an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, who's that?
Eric. When you're working with VA buyers, make sure when you first talk to them that they understand that they will need money. Because a lot of people hear that no down payment means I don't need any money to buy a house. and also let them understand that the VA is not doing the loan, because a lot of them think that VA is giving them a loan. They're just backing the loan by 25%, and that they actually have to be approved for a loan by a bank or a lender or somebody. Like, they really do not understand that. You need to let them know that up front.
Right. They're insuring the loan and only 25%. Very few people know that, Eric. Very, very few people understand that part of it. And the other thing I would say is, you know, in San Diego, we all want to stand up and say we're VA experts. We're not. And you have a huge responsibility to these folks, especially. It's easy money thinking. Buy a house at 0 down. Well, guess what? They're only here for 3 doggone years. What happens when they PCS out of here and they're not getting $3,400 a month anymore in BAH, and they're stuck with the house because we're in a recession and they can't rent it for $3,400 a month? So I kind of say, I'm sorry, I'm going to get on a soapbox, but how dare you? You know, you need to really get this. And if you don't, refer to somebody else who does, because they deserve better. Our active duty and our veterans deserve better. You need to do way more counseling than that about renting and all of that. But yeah, it costs money, closing costs. And are the closing costs going to be covered? Have I been able to get closing costs covered in this market? Yes. And then you get into appraisal issues. There's so many moving parts. And that's what another thing, Eric, I'm glad you brought it up. A lot of times listing agents or sellers think that, well, I'm going to be stuck covering closing costs, even though you haven't put it in the offer. That's not true. If you got to have closing costs covered, it better be in the offer as a credit right up front. And you need to be close hand in hand with the lender of what those closing costs are going to be. A lot of times lenders have credits available to help cover closing costs. So you got to work hand in hand with them. All right, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Let me see, make sure I have everything. I talked about great vendors. I haven't gotten to the how to get reviews and have return to clients. Okay, I'm not sure what's hilarious, Robert, but anyway.
There was a meme shared in the chat.
Oh, I can't see it. I'm too busy looking over here.
I gotta make people laugh sometimes, but it was pretty funny.
All right, I gotta open that. I'm too curious. Click to open. Got it. Yeah, exactly. That is hilarious. Okay, so how are we going to get these clients and return them into repeat clients? Okay. I do a lot of repeat and referral business, yet funny, I think that this is still a weak area for me. Some people are really fabulous at getting the reviews and the referrals up front, and there's all sorts of systems associated with this. The first thing is to be good at what you do. Okay, so competence comes first. That's really critical. How do you leave a good impression? I'm going to say it's competence, right? It's keeping the emotions between the lines. And then though, it does come down to your follow-up systems afterwards. Okay, you can get all the reviews. They can love you. They can think you're awesome. I had this VA couple, okay, that VA business is almost guaranteed return 3 to 6 years later because they're leaving again and you're going to be selling it. I had this great couple in La Mesa, okay, and they rode around in my Porsche and they loved my eclectic tunes. Okay, I mentioned I like hip hop, but I might also have opera in there. And yeah, Madonna was my 40th birthday, you know, a limo to a Madonna concert. I'm all over the board, everything but country and headbanging metal. Okay, so now you know that about me. And they wrote that they gave me wine. They wrote this great review. They talked about how much fun they had. We even had a joke going about Wiener Schnitzel. At the time, I still ate meat. I brought them Wiener Schnitzel to like celebrate when we closed on the house. That's how I was the first person to learn she was pregnant because she had to go outside and vomit at the smell of it. You know, this whole kind of thing. And then like, they didn't, and like many millennials, you know, they don't answer my phone calls. They don't respond to the emails. Didn't follow me on social media. I tried to keep in touch. My lender kept in touch. I had a tick of, you know, that time when their PCS time should be up. Guess what? I didn't learn they moved until I got a letter returned and they sold with somebody else. So they may have loved me, but I somehow didn't wrap that connection around back for the following 3 years and lost out on that sale. They didn't go with someone else because they didn't like me or weren't satisfied with me. They went with somebody else who was emotionally proximate at the time when they needed the help to sell the house. So I work with Stephen a lot on being front of mind and that emotional proximity. So what has worked for me is I created a program. It's based on Liz Johnson's book called Perk Your Sphere. I don't recommend it to someone who doesn't have an assistant unless you're really good at details or you're really high S. I'm neither. So I needed the assistant to help me to love on my clients. So basically it's a loyalty program where you love on your clients every month. They look forward to your emails. I do events. I do things like that. I'll admit that COVID has given me some challenges around that, as well as the lack of assistant. I let her go about a year and a half ago, my last one, and I haven't replaced. So, but the point is you need to have some sort of system to stay in contact, and it's got to be relevant. And what I've found now, the most relevant is text, social media, direct messages, IM, or IG, that kind of stuff has been the best for me keeping in contact. Yet I have other clients that's not how they want to stay in contact. You've got to have a system in place. The most basic of the system is what we call the Do the Database 2, which is another bold technique. And it's also a never ending referrals is another MAPS class that does it. That 2 letters of the alphabet a week, you're making phone calls, or for me, a lot of it is electronic. It's direct messages to everybody in the alphabet in your database that week. You're touching them. So basically you're touching them 4 times a year by phone call, ideally, or doing events. There's lots of different strategies. We can work on that with your coaches when the time comes. The point is you need to have them in your database. You've got Command, get them in Command, set up a smart plan. That smart plan, if you're not going to use Do the Database 2, set up at a minimum a smart plan that has you calling them 4 times a year. Okay, better yet, you have your 32 or your 36 touch, and then go from there. Don't do a bunch of expensive stuff to start with. One of the things, and I don't hear as much emphasis now as I did when I started, is lead with revenue. That's a Gary Keller thing. So don't spend money that you don't have. It costs nothing to pick up the phone and say hi. It costs nothing to text them. It costs nothing to put in a Command smart plan that has you reminding to do it. Set up also, there's already preset smart plans for home anniversary. So if you put the data in there in Command right away, home anniversary, you're probably going to have their birthdays from the intake. If you don't have it, the lender has their birthdays, put their birthdays in there. Okay, so now you have 2 more touches. You don't, and then you've also got the smart plan now on home value. So if they're home purchasers, get them in there once a month. That's 12 more touches on what's going on with their home value. You don't need to have a bunch of set your clocks back. Our old plans, they got 30 emails from realtors when it was time to set back their clocks. I don't find a lot of value in that. I find unsubscribes in that, but I think that there's value in staying top of mind, and it needs to be authentic. You've got to talk to them 4 times a year. You have to actually connect with them 4 times a year. You do need to pay attention if they've got kids and dogs, what's going on in their social media, and be involved with that. I don't know. Any other questions on that about retaining customers? I have very good retention, and I have very good referrals back from other clients. Unmute yourselves. Tell me what you've taken away. Tell me what your questions are. What do you wish I covered? What can I give to you? We're 4 minutes over. So what can I give to you in the next minute or 2?
Do you ever preface, like some people have mentioned, where you talk in either like the listing appointment or the buyer's appointment, if you bring it up like in the very beginning, like if I do a good job for you, can I expect that you would write a referral? Do you ever try anything like that, or have you had success with that?
Yes, and we're going to work on your language pattern, Sarah. It's going to be when I do a great job for you, I expect you, I'll have done, it's actually called The Promise. You can Google it on YouTube. I'll expect you to, I'll know I've done a great job for you because by the time we're done with this, you're going to have referred me to your friends and family. I also let them know, hope you're welcome. I also let them know that they probably know 7 people this year that are going to buy or sell real estate. And I need them, I tell them exactly what I want them to do. I said, I really don't want you to just give them my card. I want you to connect us in a 2-way text or email or something and give me the contact information so we make sure they don't end up with a weak agent. Okay, so you need to train everyone how to refer to you. And then you need to check in with them and ask them, but not every time, especially not during a pandemic. I'm sorry, but I am not calling every time and saying, you know, who do you know that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? That used to be our script. And it's always not, do you know? It is, who do you know? Because you assume that. That might be part of it. Or when they ask how you are, like right now, my call to my clients still is, have you refinanced? I don't make any money when they refinance. And I've had 2 clients in those calls that are like, yeah, one had refinanced, one hadn't. We love the house, but you know, yeah, it's gotten small in COVID. We're both working at home. We have a baby. And another one, you know, 2 weeks later, they weren't thinking of buying or selling, but I called them and talked to them about it. And they saw a house they loved and said, if you can get us that house, we'll sell this house. That's $2.2 million worth of business I have right now. Okay, so it's keeping in touch and giving authentically.
Great ideas. You know, I always go with this: business is simple, not easy. We overcomplicate it. We've learned a lot today from Melinda, and she shared a lot of wisdom. I hope you guys got a lot of that. I want to be, in fairness of time, end up so that people can get on their way. But Melinda, thank you so very much for coming and sharing all this great stuff. And I dropped Melinda's new email address into the chat box, so you can send her a thank you email. And tomorrow is the last day. And guess what? You get not only do you get DJ Broker Bob, you get Broker Bob. And he's gonna do the blast off, and he's gonna share his wisdom about what he's learned along the way, but also what you can do for your mindset. Because 90% of this business is mindset. And I'm gonna share with you my journey about what I did when I had my brain injury, so you can understand what I did to get my mindset back, and it will be the surefire method for you guys too. All right, you guys, we'll see you all tomorrow. Make it a great day. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you for listening and participating.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.